Chapter 15. Lizard took a deep breath and removed his long dark coat before teleporting into the lake. The cold temperature of the water made him shudder slightly, but he resisted the urge to gasp for air. Bubbles rose from the surface of the rocket, and steam billowed up from around the metal craft. Lucas had done an excellent job engineering it, but Lizard felt relief as he watched it begin rising to the surface of the water. It took only a minute before the craft reached the surface. Lizard teleported himself up nearby so that he would be ready to open the hatches and get his companions to shore as Lucas had planned. Even though he had watched a large parachute deploy and slow the small craft, it had still splashed down with enough force to go a dozen feet under the surface of the water. The rocket bobbed up and down on the surface of the lake, but Lizard would not know whether Lucas's design had really worked until he verified that Lucas and Row 82 were unharmed inside. Finally, Lizard twisted the caps off of the handles he would need to use to open the hatch. He gripped and twisted each handle one at a time until the hatch door loosened and fell down with a large splash in the cold lake water. "Lucas?" shouted Lizard. "Row 82? Are you guys okay?" Lizard looked inside. Lucas and Row 82 were both unconscious and strapped to their seats with thick twine ropes. Lizard untied the knots that secured them to their seats. He made sure they were both breathing before reaching below the seat and pulling out a large coil of rope. He tied one end of the rope to a ring that was firmly welded to a ledge where the hatch had been. "Hang in there, guys," whispered Lizard as he jumped into the water with the other end of the rope. The coil unraveled as Lizard swam toward the shore until it became taut and the floating rocket began turning in the water. Soon he was pulling it toward the shore. Lizard put his face in the water and pulled it behind him as efficiently as he could. He remembered how confident Lucas had been, not only that his rocket would get them to the shrine quickly, but that Lizard would be there to protect them. The memories of his life before he had joined Sig and Lucas came back to him as he swam. To say that he regretted having worked for Felix Light and his speed demon worshippers would be an understatement. He had come to loathe demon worshippers more than anything else. The manipulative lords of the Archdemon's hand cult seduced people with lies and false promises to partake in their murderous secrets. He had willingly participated in capturing helpless slaves to sacrifice, which was required to give demonic speed to the dark keys that he and his fellow acolytes had used. Shame filled his heart as he remembered strapping old women and young children to tables where he knew they would be sacrificed. He had been so loyal to Felix Light, and he had been fooled into believing that Felix truly cared about him and his fellow acolytes. In hindsight, he felt blind. Lizard had been no more than a tool to Felix, a card to be played. Ironically, it was Zeta 28, the ruthless augment on tank treads, that had revealed the truth to him. Though she had her own agenda and was more interested in Lizard's genetics than his well-being, he was at least glad that he had learned the truth. The world had ended up being so different from what he had originally imagined. Meeting Sig and learning about redemption had changed him. As much as he had loved serving Felix in ignorance, he grew to love liberating slaves and fighting augments and demon worshippers much more. Discovering the divine keys and learning that he was chosen to bear the space key had made him feel as though he had finally put his past away. It seemed ironic that shortly after learning the truth, he and the others had traveled back to the past to try and change it. He fought the urge to look at the Eastern Shrine. He needed to focus on helping his friends recover before satisfying his curiosity regarding Lucas's need to get here quickly. He put his face into the water and pulled quicker. His long legs splashed in the cold water and propelled the rocket he towed faster toward the shore. After a short time, Lizard realized that he had come to a part of the lake in which he could stand. He changed his technique and began running through the water. With each step, the rocket splashed forward, making it seem as though it were a large skipping stone on the water's surface. It took only a minute more before Lizard was mostly out of the water. He pulled the rocket up onto the shore with enough momentum that it lodged securely in the gravel at the lake's edge. With the craft secure, Lizard turned back to pull his comrades out of their seats. He teleported right next to the rocket and slung Lucas over his shoulder, then ran to put him on the bank. A minute later, he teleported again and then pulled Row 82 out and brought him next to Lucas. They were both still breathing. Lizard looked at them impatiently. He did not want to just leave them, but he was eager to find out what was in the Eastern Shrine. "I thought you said we needed to hurry, Lucas," muttered Lizard as he used air quotes. "If this is so important, then you should probably get up." There were several moments of silence. "Lucas!" Lizard shouted impatiently. "Time to get—" Suddenly a rush of wind came, followed by a sharp pain in the back of his head. He fell on his face and his eyesight blurred. He turned back just in time to see several acolytes in familiar black cloaks hovering over him. One of them kicked him in the head, and he lost consciousness. "Lizard!" The voice that spoke was a loud whisper. Lizard slowly opened his eyes and ignored the throbbing pain in his head. He tried to rub his face, but quickly realized that he was chained to a wall. He groaned in frustration. "Shh!" whispered the voice beside him. He turned his head and realized that the voice belonged to Lucas. "Lucas?" whispered Lizard. "What happened?" "I'm supposed to ask you that question," said Lucas in an annoyed whisper. "You were supposed to watch out for us when we landed." "I did," protested Lizard. "I was ambushed." "You?" asked Lucas with a frown. "They were too fast for you?" "Sorry," said Lizard. "You're right. I should have seen them coming. I was pulling you out of that crazy rocket, though." "Well, I guess there's that," said Lucas in a softer whisper. "I can't believe it really worked," said Lizard. "The rocket?" asked Lucas. "Of course it worked." Lizard smiled even with the pain. "So is this the Eastern Shrine?" asked Lizard. "Yes," replied Lucas. "There are a lot more open spaces than there were when Epsilon 41 was using the place. He must have closed a lot of it off." "Why would he do that?" asked Lizard. "Well," said Lucas thoughtfully, "it could be that it fell into disrepair, or it could be that he liked closing things up, which may explain why he lived in a giant armored shell." Lizard smiled. If he had to be chained to a wall, he was glad that Lucas was with him. "Where is Row 82? asked Lizard. "The other side of me," said Lucas. Lizard strained and saw the augment chained to the wall on the other side of Lucas. "You awake, Row 82? asked Lizard. "No," said Lucas. "They were worried about the machines on his ears and throat, so they beat him pretty badly." Lizard felt guiltier as Lucas explained their predicament. It had been his job to protect them, and he had failed. To make matters worse, they had been overcome by opponents that he was better suited to fight than the others. "Did they take your key?" asked Lizard. "Yes," said Lucas. "All the keys are on the table over there." Lucas nodded toward a table outside the iron bars in which they were imprisoned. "They left them close," whispered Lizard as he looked around. "They are confident in their speed should someone escape," explained Lucas. "Speaking of escape," said Lizard, "any ideas?" "Yes," said Lucas, "if you feel up to fighting." Lizard smiled and nodded. The opportunity to redeem himself made the pain of his injuries and soreness in his wrists melt away. Lucas bit his lip as he slowly squeezed his wrists out of the shackles that fastened him to the wall. After that, he picked up a small bolt and a long, thin iron filing from the floor. He rushed over to Lizard and pressed the bolt hard into the lock on his shackle. He then carefully used the filing to push the pins in the lock to the correct positions. After a moment, he pushed the entire mechanism, and the shackle clicked open. "Keep your hand up there for now," whispered Lucas. It took about another minute for him to pick the lock on the other shackle. When he did, Lizard sprang to his feet. "What about the bars?" asked Lizard. "They put their confidence in the shackles," explained Lucas, "and in the noise that the gate makes when you push it open. That will alert them. As soon as we push it open, we need the keys. I need you to be fast, Lizard." Lizard smiled and rushed through the door. In the blink of an eye, he had 3 keys on the table and had teleported away. Several black-cloaked acolytes rushed into the room and saw Lucas standing without shackles. He had a smile on his face. "Where did the large one go?" asked one of the acolytes angrily. "Sorry," said Lucas. "You're too slow for him." The acolyte pulled the door in the bars open slowly, and it squeaked loudly. "You will regret saying that," said the acolyte. "I will show you how slow I can be as I tear your tongue out of your mouth." The other acolytes laughed. "You will never get the chance," laughed Lucas confidently. "Bold words from a boy in a cage," said the acolyte as he approached Lucas. In a blur of teleportations, Lizard flickered around the room and pounded the faces and stomachs of all the acolytes, throwing them all to the floor unconscious. Lizard teleported in front of Lucas. "Nice," said Lucas with a smile. "Let's get row 82 and—" Suddenly the door swung open, and Samuel Godwinson stumbled in. Blood oozed out of his nose, and there were abrasions and lacerations all over his arms. "Samuel Godwinson?" stammered Lucas. He turned. "Lucas Flynn?" exclaimed Samuel. "How did you get all the way out here?" "I was going to ask you the same thing," said Lucas. "Stephanie and I were captured by Felix Light's men," said Samuel. "Where is Stephanie?" asked Lucas. "I'm trying to find her," said Samuel. "Then it's good we've run into each other," said Lizard confidently. "Let's find her."